Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. We are in the middle of the week and winding down October, which is kind of shocking. It's gone by in a bit of a blur. Hey Angela, welcome. Thanks for joining. Good to see you. Just wanted to welcome everybody to this final live on sleep, because the course actually begins on Saturday, Saturday the 26th of October. So we've only got about 3 days to go. So get in there and get that early bird pricing. It's at £197. And today we're talking a little bit about hypnosis. So for those who don't know, my whole background has been based around non-pharmaceutical ways to help anxiety, stress, and sleep issues. So I have been spending the last sort of 10 to 20 years, very much immersed in that sort of space. I went to uni 18 years ago and learned about psychology. And then after that, when I started my banking job, I ended up actually learning about CBT and hypnotherapy. So CBT, for those who aren't familiar, it's cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's one of the most widely supported psychotherapies around. So it's got a lot of evidence behind it, and it's very effective. Usually 6 to 10 sessions should be enough for someone to make some really useful transformative changes in their lives. Hypnosis was one of the first non-pharmaceutical interventions that I learned about for dealing with anxiety and for dealing with stress, for dealing with sleep issues. I started practicing hypnotherapy in 2008 and found it a remarkable way to cope and to help people deal with that kind of monkey mind. So we learned a lot about meditation as well, because hypnosis is very much rooted in Eastern tradition and pranayamic breathing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and how useful it can be for sort of calming down that nervous system. Very quickly, for those who don't know the story, my grandfather suffered from generalized anxiety disorder. He was put on diazepam for 20 years. It basically caused multiple strokes and led to vascular dementia. So we saw him decline very dramatically over a 7-year period where he became essentially bedridden. And that was really hard for me to witness, because he was a very robust, strong, energetic, very fit and very active man. And for him to just sort of dwindle away to nothing was very hard for me to look at. So that's why I started studying psychology, and I wanted to learn a lot about pharmaceuticals and what they can actually, how they can harm your brain. And what I did learn is that they're not meant to be used for very long periods of time, because they can cause things like brain damage, liver damage, kidney failure, all those sorts of things. Usually the side effects on the back of your pharmaceuticals are going to be a lot worse off for you than the actual condition that you're dealing with. So long-term use of psychopharmaceuticals, never a good thing. So if you're someone who, or if you know someone who is, on fluoxetine, Prozac, Xanax, Zoloft, any of those sort of your standard antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, they are not designed for long-term use. So finding non-pharmaceutical ways to treat anxiety, depression, stress, sleep issues, those are really big factors for me. Now, I suffered with my own sleep issues. I've always been a type A type personality, very busy, very active. And I was in several, when I was younger, sort of 14 to 18, I was in several musical ensembles. So I used to sing with choirs. Then I joined a band, a rock band. And I was sort of doing 3 or 4 gigs, 3 or 4 gigs a week, sometimes 2 gigs a night. I'd be in one part of the country and then in another part later on. So, starting off at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, then getting to somewhere for 10 to do a gig, and then not getting home till sort of 2, 3 in the morning, and really struggling to get to sleep. And that was before my banking life in the UK. And things definitely became exacerbated then. And, doing having that sort of night owl lifestyle really wasn't conducive for me. And I still had a day job at that point as well. Hey, Auntie Debbie. Hi, Angela. Everybody's joining back. Great to see you. So My body clock was completely out of whack from, being up late, singing late, from being wired. The adrenaline that comes from performing, it's really, really kind of hard to come down, which is why you hear about a lot of musicians and performers who rely on meds in order to help them come down, because the adrenaline rush after you get off stage, it takes a really long time to wind down. So I remember at one point, it was like an entire week I had gone without sleep, but I had been gigging continuously, and I was exhausted, like really, really exhausted, like on the verge of collapse. And, the doctor that I had gone to at the time, she put me on Valium. So I was younger, I was in, like I said, in my teens, and yeah, put me on Valium in my teens, because she said, you're just going to need to sleep. She's like, you don't have to be on it forever. And like I said, subsequently learned that, my poor granddad had been on that for many years, and what it did to his brain. So fast forward to 2008, when I started studying hypnosis, because at that point I wanted to really learn how to help people. I'd been in my banking job for about 2 years by then. And I basically started straight after uni. I went into 2006, right after graduating from uni, and went straight into Barclays. It was supposed to be 1 week, turned into 10 years. And what I learned from that is that there were loads and loads of people around me who were all struggling with a lot of the things that I had been struggling with. But their way of dealing with it was going to see the on-site doctor, the on-site medical practitioner, and getting meds, and just getting back to their desks and getting on with things. And generally that's how our society is built. Like, we end up going to work, and we end up spending a lot of time there, and we end up not wanting to jeopardize our time there, because obviously we're dependent on the income that comes from work. So we don't want to be off sick. We don't want to be not seen at our desk, not seen as being productive. So, and in banking in particular, being aware of, FaceTime, people were always very conscious of how much time are you actually putting in at work, and can your manager see you? So there was very much that kind of culture of being micromanaged, being observed. And yeah, it wasn't very healthy or conducive to being healthy at all, psychologically or physiologically, because you spend a lot of time sitting and not really doing very much other than sitting at your desk and being hunched over like this. So loads of back issues and stuff would crop up. But in addition, the psychological stuff that came up with it, the pressure to perform, to deliver, all of that created like this perfect storm. And that kind of led to, to ended up with lots and lots of different issues, disorders, and the sort of pressure that people are under, and the ways that they were being treated back in 2006, which was just go to the doctor, get some meds, get back to your desk. And instead, I wanted to find another way, because, like I said, I'd seen what had happened with my grandfather. He'd had his first stroke in 2001. And that was, like I said, really hard for me to witness. He was my hero, my idol in a lot of ways, and was a really happy, well, at least he appeared to be a really happy person, when obviously he wasn't struggling with his anxiety, and full of life and full of energy and full of love. But I think, like I said, it really was scarring for me to watch that sort of degeneration, like how his brain just started wasting away because of the medication and the strokes. And I really needed to find out, and it became my mission to figure out, how do you help people who suffer from this hideous condition understand how to cope with it, right? So how we cope with anxiety, because essentially we have to pay attention to the things that are causing us anxiety. And yes, we might have a label like generalized anxiety, where everything is making you nervous and making you anxious and making you feel overwhelmed. But becoming more mindful by slowing things down, that allows us to become a lot calmer. So our lives in general are very accelerated. We spend a lot of time running from one thing to the next thing and being on that treadmill of life. And it becomes quite difficult for us to, thanks to everybody who's rejoined. Hi, Helen. Hi, Auntie Debbie. Hi, Angela. Looks like we've got a few people on here. And yeah, so being able to become more mindful and slowing down is one way to cope with anxiety. And particularly in the evenings when I get clients saying like, I can't shut my mind off when I'm trying to sleep, and I just end up like, ruminating, just mulling things over and over and over without resolution, and it kind of keeps them up and keeps them awake and makes them feel like they're going a little bit mad. And I'm, like I said, very familiar with that feeling based on my history when I told you I was like singing 2 or 3 different gigs in one day, one evening, and then getting into bed very, very late at 2 a.m. and not being able to slow down my mind or slow down my body. My heart rate would have been accelerated. My mind would be racing. So I can really relate to how stressful that can be when you're trying to wind down and you're trying to slow down and you find it really hard to. And that's why people go for the easy fix. They go to the doctor and they say, like, I can't turn my mind off. I'm not getting any sleep. And you're not getting any sleep because you're not necessarily working with your circadian rhythm. So if you are ramping up your activities in the evening when you're really meant to be winding them down, because your body is designed to actually wind down in the evening, your cortisol needs to come down. It doesn't need to, it actually is coming down. It's designed to do that. But if you're going and engaging in activities or things that ramp up your cortisol, that's your stress hormone. So things like high intensity exercise in the evening, anything after 5 o'clock, you don't want to be going and engaging in anything that's going to get your heart rate elevated. You don't want to be arguing with your partner or your children if that's going to get your heart rate elevated and kind of keep you awake and not in a great frame of mind. So as much as possible, you want to keep thinking of evening time from 5 p.m. winding down. Lights need to be going down at 8 p.m. Now, hypnosis and guided meditations and mindfulness meditations and slowing down the body, these are all really great ways to help bring that cortisol response down as well. And the way that, like I said, the way that I had trained and learned was about becoming more aware of thoughts as well. So I'd learned CBT, which is all about learning about automatic negative thoughts when they come up. So becoming very, very conscious of the way that you think, almost becoming a detached observer of the way that you think, and starting to just kind of look at, well, is that healthy, is it unhealthy, is it true, challenging some of the thoughts that would come up, noticing if they are racing out of control, and if you're kind of like, if you've got monkey mind where your thoughts are just going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. So hypnosis and, like I said, guided meditations and practicing mindful eating, mindfulness practices, they can be very, very helpful in getting you to slow down. Now, you don't only have to do this at night. I think it's very useful to kind of build in these periods throughout the day as well, moments where you slow down, particularly before you eat. So many times, we sit down, or we don't even sit down, we grab something to eat on the go and we inhale it. We don't really chew it. We don't really savor it. And by not chewing it, we kind of skip out on a ton of the enzymes that we need in order to break the food down so that it can be absorbed and digested properly. And then we can extract the nutrients that we need from it. If we're not chewing slowly, if we're on the go, if we're running from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, what ends up happening to us is that, like I said, we end up with bloating, discomfort, because we're not breaking our foods down, we're not absorbing nutrients, our livers aren't going to be working well, and we're not producing enough of those wonderful gastric juices and that are needed to break down food. So the thing that we need to remember is to go slow. Slowing down tends to really start helping the body get back into the rest and digest state. And that's a parasympathetic state. When we're in fight or flight, which is when, like I said, adrenaline and cortisol are racing around us, what happens then is that we are in a sympathetic nervous state, and that's not really a great place for us to be. It's designed for short term, like I said, if we need to get away from a saber-toothed tiger, that's the evolutionary response. It helps us out there because blood flows to our extremities. It enables us to run or to attack, whatever it is that we need to do at that point. But it doesn't help with things like digestion, and it definitely doesn't help with sleep. So toward the end of the day, we do not want to be in a fight or flight mode. We want to be in rest and digest. That's where we want to be relaxing, turning down our lights, dimming them, practicing slow breathing, learning a relaxation technique. And I wanted to actually do a little bit of that today. if anyone has any questions right now, because we've got about 10 minutes before I wrap up, and I just wanted to check in with everyone if they have, any of you have practiced any sort of slow breathing meditation, ever tried hypnosis for anything. Now would be a great time to jump in and, you know, send me your questions, send me your thoughts. I want to hear from you. Tell me what you think about this. And if you're one of those people like me who have, you know, really struggled with a racing mind and, you know, and having that kind of issue at the end of the day where it's really, really hard to wind down, when you really need to just be thinking about gentle, relaxing activities. So, you know, getting ready for bed, just being prepped for that, having deep relaxing, deep breathing, and lavender oils and Epsom salt baths, and thinking more of like rituals in the evenings from about 8 p.m., dimming your lights, you know, and starting your rituals for getting ready for bed so that you're ready by 9:30, 10 to get into bed, to get your, you know, your 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep, because between 10 and 2 is that sort of magic time when your body's doing all these wonderful things that are going to help restore it. So going to bed later than that can be really, really harmful and detrimental, and increase your risk of things like Alzheimer's, anxiety, dementia, stroke, cancer, diabetes, obesity, all of those things. So, you know, getting to bed at a sensible time, it improves your lifespan, it improves your immunity, and being able to help your body wind down and support that process, you know, being mindful of what it needs in order to do that, and working with your circadian rhythms. That's where we want to generate a lot of our activity, and focus our attention. That's where we want to focus our attention. Okay, Philip. Hi, Philip. Welcome. Thanks for signing up to doing my course. We're launching on Saturday. Philip signed up yesterday. He hasn't tried hypnosis, but he's tried meditation, and it made a difference when done 3 times a day. Yeah, so hypnosis, Philip, is very, very similar. And like I said, it's rooted in Eastern traditions. It is rooted in pranayamic breathing and breath work and meditation. So it is very similar. I always say to people, it's literally like a guided meditation. It isn't the stuff that, unfortunately, that you would see. I don't know if many people saw Shallow Hal with Anthony Robbins and Jack Black, where, you know, Tony Robbins snapped his fingers in the elevator and Jack Black suddenly was only seeing the good in people. Hypnosis doesn't really work like that. That's an element of stage hypnosis. I really wish that it would, because there'd be so many things that I would love to snap my fingers and just get and just tell people, this is what I want from you. Snap my fingers like a witch. But unfortunately, that's just bad press, like you said, given scare stories and bad press that it gets. You know, that's stage hypnosis, and usually there are stooges planted in the audience who come up and pretend like, you know, their bodies are as stiff as a board and they can't be, like a plank. Or, you know, when people say, oh, I'm going to make you quack like a duck. I used to get that a lot when people would hear, oh, you're a hypnotherapist. Can you make me bark like a dog and quack like a duck? I'm like, not unless you want to. You know, so hypnosis is generally around repeated suggestions. So, and there's suggestions that you tell the therapist that you want to become super relaxed. And during that relaxed state, these suggestions are repeated to you that you agree on in advance. Because you say to the therapist, look, I want to be able to sleep better. I want to feel calmer. I want to feel more relaxed. I want to feel more at peace, more balanced. And the therapist basically repeats that back to you after doing a short induction. And the induction, like I said, is rooted in yogic breathing, where you do like slow belly breathing. So if you've done meditation before and you've learned a little, or you've practiced yoga, usually at the end of a yoga session, there's sort of like a 10 to 15 minute meditation that happens where they get you to lie on the floor. It's usually one of the best parts of going to yoga for me, where you lie there and you just practice your breathing and you get tuned into your body and you relax all the muscles of your body and you breathe into your belly and slow the breath down. And that becomes the thing that that is really, really helpful in helping that cortisol response, turning it down. So turning down the dial on cortisol and getting you into that wonderful rest and digest state. So Angela says, I use breathing exercises and I find these super helpful for relaxation. Fantastic. You know, nobody I know who has tried this, even some of the most anxious and tense people. Like I had a lady who was a smoker who came to me and she said, I don't know how to relax. I don't know how this is going to help me. I've never been able to relax. I don't think it's going to work. And she had a lot of anxiety around it. And what ended up happening was that we in the first induction, it didn't work on her. And this was when I was a very early, like a novice hypnotherapist. I had just sort of like come out of training a couple of weeks before, and she was one of my first clients. And I was super paranoid because in all my classes and stuff, we had to practice on each other, and everybody was very receptive and very willing to relax. So it used to happen very easily. But with this lady, she had a lot of fear that she wouldn't be able to. And then that is what was happening. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. She wasn't able to relax because she told herself that she couldn't. I got a little bit panicked, but I managed to keep it together in the session. And we tried 2 or 3 different induction techniques. They all usually involve finding something to focus on. So the sort of standard thing that everyone's familiar with is using a pendulum. So the pendulum is the thing that would keep people focused, where they just stare at it and they become very sleepy. And then I give them suggestions for their eyes to close, and that they're ready to relax now, and they're ready to sleep now, and they're ready to sleep deeper. And that tends to work really quickly. With her, that wasn't working. And that was like my sort of like standard trick. And I was like, oh boy, this pendulum isn't working. Got to find something else to do. And I tried 2 other things, and the third one literally was the charm. It worked. And she was, in a very deeply relaxed state within about the first sort of like 3 minutes. Initially I had to keep my cool, because if I started to panic, it would have really panicked her. But she was very relaxed. We were able to work on her phobias, and then her smoking as well. So hypnosis is really powerful for helping you reprogram your subconscious thoughts and subconscious mind, once you're willing as well to be able to do that. So it's one of the, I really enjoy working with people in that way. And now that I have got the functional medicine and functional nutrition background, now it's very, very integrative and really holistic. And you can really sort of like approach the same issue, but with multiple tools, and giving clients those tools to work with, I find extremely fulfilling and really rewarding. And I love when they walk away and they're like, you know what, that actually was a lot easier than I thought. Recently worked with someone who had been dieting for many years and couldn't lose weight. He could stick to something temporarily, and then after 6 weeks, he'd sort of fall off the wagon and would quit his exercise routine and would start back. And he would always have cravings, would always be craving things. Always, having Diet Coke, looking for stimulants, needing caffeine to keep him going, because he'd be really tired by the time the afternoon rolled around. And within the first 2 weeks of us working together, we did some lab work on him, found out what was going on with his gut. His energy levels, we cut out the Diet Cokes, we cut out some of the sugary things that he'd been eating, got him on some really good quality supplements to help him balance his blood sugar. And once we did that, he said, oh my God, this is actually so easy. He said, I like eating this way. It's really clean. I feel very good, very light, very energized. I don't miss the Diet Coke. I'm not craving anything anymore. He said the weight is just falling away. And the reason behind that is because we got him out of an inflamed state really quickly. We took out all the inflammatory triggers from his food. We made sure that he was getting really good quality sleep, because he was another one who was not sleeping well. He would kind of wake up in the middle of the night and go raid the biscuit cupboard, and sort of like be really dependent on, sugar and coffee to kind of keep him going, or caffeine. So got him off of those things. And within 2 weeks, he hasn't had alcohol now in 3 months. He said he went on holiday a couple of weeks ago and he cheated by having a donut. But other than that, he said he felt no discomfort once he stuck to the plan. So we kept him away from gluten, kept him away from dairy, kept him away from sugar, kept him away from alcohol. 90 days later, he's lost 10 kilos. He's feeling great, feeling energized. He has a very high profile job. He's got 3 children, very busy family life, very busy professional life. He manages a really big team. And he's now no longer, because I asked him, I said, how's stress at work? He said, you know what? It's the same as it's always been. He says, but I don't feel the same way about it anymore. He said, it's still as intense as it's always been. He said, but I feel like I've got the resources and the reserves now to deal with it. He said, I'm not feeling cranky and irritable and hangry all the time. And I now have the energy to actually get stuff done. And so much so, his wife is now a client because she saw how great things went for him. So she signed up now to get her GI map done, so we could figure out what's going on with her gut as well. So And we've used an element of all these tools. You know, we looked at his diet, we made sure he was sleeping well, how he was exercising, if it was ramping up his cortisol in the evening, which was leading to him wanting to have snacks later on when he should be winding down. And then making sure that he was getting, like I said, really good quality sleep, managing stress well, and taking the right kinds of supplements to support him. So meditation, slowing down, eating the right things. These are all really useful tools in the battle against stress and 21st century living. What I'd like us to do is just practice a small breathing exercise. I want you to just put your hand on your heart. I usually put my right hand on my heart, my left hand on my belly button, just on my navel. And then I just want you to close your eyes, put your feet flat on the ground, sit up straight at the edge of your seat if you can. And we're just going to slow our breathing down. I know most of us are in the UK, so it's evening time. It's 8:30, and it's sort of that's the time that I kind of think that we need to all be getting ready for bed, winding down, turning down our lights, getting our bath, our Epsom salt bath, diffusing our lavender or rubbing it into the soles of our feet, and just preparing yourself, getting your rituals in place. And just start directing the breath further down into your tummy. Start noticing where that breath is coming from. Directing it into that left hand. That left hand should be on your tummy. And I want you to start thinking about making the exhalation longer than the inhalation. So when you breathe in, you can think of breathing in for a count of 4. And when you breathe out for a count of 6 or 7. They call it, it's rooted in 7-11 breathing, which is pranayamic breathing, yogic breathing. Or we shorten it for today's purposes. You breathe in for 4 and release for 7. And practicing just a few rounds of that can be really helpful, really beneficial for getting your mind to wind down. And you can do the counting yourself, because the counting will give you something to focus on. So like I said, in a hypnotic induction, there's usually something that a client focuses on, and it's the pendulum. But in this case, so if you don't have something like that and you don't want to have to knock yourself out with it, you just want to start thinking about maybe numbers, thinking about maybe a word you can think of, or a sentence, like a mantra or an affirmation. I am peaceful and calm in all situations. That's usually one that's pretty general and works for everyone. I feel calm and relaxed in all situations. Another one that I like using with clients is, my security and peace comes from within. And you can choose one that works for you, one that resonates with you and that you connect with. So when you breathe in, you're sort of breathing in calm. And when you breathe out, you're breathing out anxiety or fear or overwhelm. So, on that note, 8:36 in the UK, 9:36 in Spain for Angela, only 12:36 here in California. But for everybody who has joined and who is going to be winding down for the evening, practice doing that throughout the day as well. Like if you have to go to a meeting, or you are on the tube or the subway or taking public transport and you get a seat, practice doing that before you hit your job, or in the middle. If you've got to go to a meeting, like I said, I used to do it a lot before I had to make presentations, because it would just center you and you're able to connect and communicate really clearly. So thank you for joining tonight. We'll be back next week. It won't be about sleep. We have something very special planned, and I'll share that with you over email in the next couple of days. But today's the last of the sleep segment, and I'm really glad that those who've joined over the last 4 weeks, I hope you've enjoyed it. There's still time, like I said, the next couple of days to get on board with the course starting on Saturday. It's 6 weeks, 3 group coaching sessions, weekly recordings, very similar to what we just experienced, but you'll have you'll have access to it. And it's all going for less than the price of a one-to-one session with me. So, and that's the idea behind it, trying to make this as accessible to people as possible, to improve your health and your happiness in any way that I can that doesn't involve medications. So thanks so much for your time, and I want to see you all very soon, okay? Take care, lots of love, bye-bye.